Hey, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Rachel Milano with the REMwell Foundation. I am going to talk about, we're doing this series, Talk Till Someone Listens, and this is episode 3. I am using my own webcam. I think I'm going to have to upgrade that because it looks a little fuzzy. But anyways, I'm kind of excited to talk about this next topic. We're talking about leaving it all in the past. It's something that I'm hearing socially and personally and amongst traumatic violation survivors a lot. Earlier today, we talked about triggers and landmines and landmines. We also discussed yesterday about, or I talked about, what it is to have internal amputations. So I'm kind of working off of my Instagram posts. So if you'd like to visit on Instagram, it is remwell.foundation. And that's how you'll be able to find us there or find me there. I do have a small team of people, especially my family, who have been helping me along the way in the past 10 years, trying to establish our organization and all the varied things that we have done for local communities and communities, extended communities outside of our own. This is the next step. So before we start building the garden and the memorial garden, the Walk of Love Memorial Garden, and before we start getting deeply entrenched in the earth, literally, if you want to find out more about that, you can visit remwellfoundation.org. But in any event, before all of our season campaigns begin, I just wanted to launch this series of conversations that we can hold in the chat, which, by the way, the chat is open. Let me see, let me go over here. Hi, room. I'm still talking to myself, but that's okay because I'm going to talk until someone listens. So if you're listening now, or if you're going to plug in later, the goal here is to encourage, motivate, and inspire those who have lived through traumatic violation, and I've gone over what that means in some of my other videos, so you can always go back. But briefly, if you have experienced trauma in which your will has been usurped or violated, then that is considered traumatic violation. There is a myriad of different trauma types that fall under that umbrella. So I really want to encourage you to listen to some of the talks that I'm giving because they're transformative in nature. They're here for those who are struggling through their journey through restoration, and those who are just entering the process of restoration, who have made that decision that they're not going to permit the trauma to be the defining factor of their future and then defining their choices. To the much in which they are capable, because all of this is tied to what one is capable of doing. Lots of people are able-bodied, and lots of people are mentally able or have, spiritual desires to do things and things like that. But what are you truly capable of doing, and how much has traumatic violation disabled you? So we're going to talk about all those things. And even though it can disable you in some parts, I also want to say that it can be a source of empowerment. It is all in how we choose to reuse or repurpose the aspects of our life that have altered us uniquely. So I am also talking to those who have not been directly impacted by traumatic violation, but who have been connected to via love relationships or friendships or direct family contacts, family relationships, and you know very intimately what it is like and what the challenges are and the hurdles and obstacles that may present themselves when loving someone who has endured traumatic violation. So I'm speaking to those audiences, and then I'm also speaking to the general social social environment, and it's just so vast. So many people are connected in so many different ways now. We're connected online, we're more social with each other even in the grocery store as a result of how open we've become online. And so some people are internationally connected when they never were before. And I've made friends in Germany, I've made friends in Italy, I've made friends I made friends all over Norway, Sweden, like I've made friends. And so it's very important that the greater populace also realize that they are not affected by traumatic violation, that they are very much so a part of the restoration of the restorative process. And without them and their efforts and their outlook and their take on life, things cannot progress in a healing and healthy healing fashion. We can't maximize that. We are minimizing the degree to which we can reach the fullness, the full threshold of restoration because it's impeded by social stigma. And so I am hoping that by covering all of these different angles, and lucky for me, I have enough voices in my head to decipher all of these various aspects and elements of the importance surrounding traumatic violation. So I do this from a layman's approach. I say that before and I say it now. As a traumatic violation survivor, it has been very important for me to adopt the empirical learning process, that whole look at life and what is it telling you about your own life. So reflecting the healing process as I see it in life, and as I'm listening to other survivors, and I'm listening to the challenges of those who love them, and as I'm listening to, unfortunately, even as I'm listening to offenders. And that gives me another look into the depth of traumatic violation. So where I gain most of my insight is by encompassing all of those factors and trying to see through the lens of each of them, and then translating that somehow into how it interprets for the rest of us. Like, how can I get those who do not comprehend what goes on inside here to better understand what it is like for traumatic violation survivors? And how do I get traumatic violation survivors, especially those who have had complex exposure, that is long-term exposure, compounding exposure to traumatic violation? How do I get them to see the perspective of those who haven't had that? And there's a lot of frustration amongst all of those sides. And it is only when we make the ground soft and ready to receive the seed can we maximize on healing and the power of restoration. There's a stage of healing, and then there's a stage of rebuilding and redefining and repurposing and refunctioning, and all of that stuff is all part of the course of restoration. So it's an everyday uphill drive. There must be an ambition involved. There must be a desire and a love for self that is higher than and greater than the things that transpired and the things that you've endured. So we'll talk about that on another note, but on another subject matter. But I did want to talk today, this evening, because I already talked it today, but I wanted to talk this evening particularly, and I have my timer up, so I won't try to go overboard on my time. But I wanted to talk about leaving in the past. On my Instagram, I posted a picture of a tree, and that tree was a tree that was severed in half, and then you get to see the rings or the life rings of the tree. That particular tree had been damaged by lightning strike. So there was a burn mark inside the tree. Sometimes in life, we're struck by lightning more than once. It is true. But as it relates and as it reflects to trauma, we're often told by those who are short-tempered with us or who are impatient about our situation, who lack the degree of compassion or empathy or sympathy that we need in order to develop and in order to process pain. Pain is just what it is. And unfortunately, we can transfer pain onto others and it can make them feel very uncomfortable. So we have to be more responsible and accountable as traumatic violation survivors to not impose that on anyone who isn't willing or able to or even capable of being there as a pillar of support. So choose wisely. But also it is the responsibility of the persons who don't feel they are equipped to maybe become better equipped, because the reality is you are going to acquaint yourself and maybe even love someone who is a traumatic violation survivor. And I'll go over later about signs and symptoms and all that kinds of things and things that you can observe just on the ground level for, you know, you don't have to have someone tell you their whole story and to understand that something isn't the norm that I'm accustomed to, right? So it may be normal, but it may be normal pain, right? And that may be animated in behavioral activities or words or displays of sentiment or thought or feelings that you're not comfortable sitting in, resting in. So we'll talk about that too. So growth on both sides, on all sides, right? Growth on all sides is very important, very important. So what we're talking about with regards to leaving it in the past is that, and I touched on it a little bit earlier too in the previous episode about you have to excuse me, I have fibromyalgia, so sometimes the track skips a beat. You might not understand that unless you're my age, but sometimes the track skips a beat. In any event, I did an earlier episode, and we talked a little bit about what it is to have something carry over into the present repeatedly. Oftentimes we're expected or asked to drop something or to let go or to leave it in the past. And the fact of the matter is, this is your story. This is your life story. It is not just like a story. Like, it's your life story. Like when you die, the story is over the part that you write. And the part that other people add to that equation, well, I mean, that's later. You're not here for that, some believe. And some others believe that you are, but you know, do you have direct influence over that? What you have direct influence over is the story that you're writing right now. Can that story be edited? Yes, but even in the edit, you can't erase what transpired because that changes history. And the facts remain that these violations occurred in your life. You can't erase that lightning strike from inside the tree. If you try to gouge that out and be like, hey, you know, let's just try to erase this part and the tree will heal around it. You know what I mean? Actually, that would make the tree very weak and even kill the tree. So life gives us an example of how to treat serious trauma. It gives us many examples, but that was just one, right? And you can even look at the side of a mountain. You can tell by cutting into the layers of the earth whether or not it has experienced drought, whether it experienced a flood, whether it experienced a landslide, and whether it experienced an earthquake, an avalanche. Like all those things are recorded in the history. Should we remove any of that? Would we even know accurately what took place? Granted, they were damaging. Granted, they were harmful and maybe destructive. Maybe they killed a lot of people. It's very, very possible. But Is it important to the overall history of our life? It is. Without those studies and those scientific researches being accurate, then we're misinformed. We don't get the whole scope of the picture. And if we're trying to create solutions and resolutions to problems that may have been as a result of those impacts, we really can't do that, not accurately, because there's important, pertinent information that's missing. So we could really look into people's behaviors and not have that information. But would we be able to really create an authentic solution, or will we just have some random answers? So I talked a little bit about that today. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that now. Would we really be able to have solutions if we're not able to examine the problems? If we're not able to really dissect the traumatic or destructive parts of nature, how do we create prevention solutions? How do we then go about recognizing and identifying when the new generation needs help, support, and intervention? How do we do that? By erasing or telling people to forget their past, or by creating situations which make them uncomfortable to where they have to keep their story, their life story, concealed from anyone. And these are people who need to bring that information out, because it's easy to deal with the things that are good. I mean, who doesn't like warm and fuzzy? Who doesn't like cocoa rather than bitter cola? I mean, people will always prefer what makes them feel comfortable. Unfortunately, subject matters of pain make people feel uncomfortable. Well, sometimes you got to get fucking uncomfortable. See, I used a good one there. Anyways, those strikes, I remember when I broke my arm. I'm going to give you some reference that a lot of people can relate to. I remember when I broke my arm right here and right here. I was 10 years old. I ran through a slide thinking I was just the shiznit. See, I didn't say the word. I thought it was great. I was in my foster home and I was like, wow, you know, the sprinkler's going round and round, and I'm just going to go through, and I bet you I can make it through without the water touching me. That was the goal. I don't know if you had those old-fashioned sprinklers. They were kind of arched like this, and they would just do like this, and the water would, and it would create like a rainbow of water, right? And then you would just kind of go underneath. Yeah. So my goal was to go underneath and not let the water hit me. Like, I got this. Yo, I slid in the puddle of water that was underneath, like today's modern day slip and slides, like the grass had turned into that. So I slid underneath there and I broke my arm. Do you realize I didn't even realize I broke my arm? Like, it wasn't until everyone pointed and was like, oh my God. And they're pointing at me, talking about how I broke my arm, and I'm looking at it. And it wasn't until my eyes made contact with my wrist and saw that it was like, doot, doot, doot. I was like, no! Anyways, the point of that was when I went to, my social worker drove over right away because I'm in foster home. So it was her responsibility to come and scoop me up, which she did, and took me to the nearest emergency room. And I laid there, and the doctor said, you know, I think you're a brave girl. And I'm looking like, at least one of us does, you know? And he said, I think I'm just going to count to 10. And then I'm just going to break your arm back into place so that it'll be fixed again. I'm just going to break it back. And I'm looking over at Peggy, my dear Peggy, who was my social worker. I'm like, is this really going to happen? Like, I'm scared. And she said, it's going to be okay. It will be all right, love. And I said, okay. I look at the doctor and he says, okay, 1, and I'm waiting for 10. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God. And part of me wanted to scream, and the other part of me was like, is it fixed? And I went with the is the fixed part. And it was like little painful, but it was wearing off, and I was happy that it was fixed. But all the while, he's talking to me, and he's talking to me in a very kind of, you know, mellow, calm down, it's going to be okay kind of voice. And he's telling me that this break will make my arm stronger. Now, the break was painful, and the break was considered bad, but the break will heal itself. And when it heals itself, as you're using that hand, because I'm ambidextrous, so as I was using that hand, it actually grew to be stronger. Where the break happens was a little bit stronger than in this arm. Now, I'm always very careful in telling this story and stories like it, because there are people who say things to you as a traumatic violation survivor, which, by the way, that was a traumatic incident that happened, a traumatic experience, but not traumatic violation. So just helping to clarify those two. But I'm very careful, because people overreach sometimes. And in their overreach, they say, see, what didn't kill you makes you stronger. I want to express to you how very unhealthy that statement is. It does kill some people. It kills a very many people. And that I persevered and endured through it is not a testament to what it could have done to me. So I want to say, no one is going to line their child up to experience sexual violation as a child in order to make them stronger. No one is going to encourage domestic violence to continue to occur in the home, because surely the children who survive it will grow up and be stronger. See, this is not how we test strength. We allow the organic process. The organic limitations are already set in place. Death of a loved one, organic. These are traumas, right? Breaking my arm, trauma, right? It's already organically designed that we experience trauma that strengthen us. It's organically designed that way, right? We don't need excessive damage, excessive trauma in the scope of violation, in the framework of violation, in order to prove that we can be strong. We're already built tough. We're like Ford. We're already there. We don't need to redesign the whole plan and infect it with all kinds of viciousness and corruption in order to prove that it's strong. Okay, so please, I encourage you strongly to stop saying that to survivors of violation. Okay, or survivors or anything for that matter. We are already strong. We are already made and designed. Some of us, yes, may have a spirit, passion, a wherewithal about life, a pursuit of life that might be a little more toned, if you will. And by toned, I mean like when you go to the gym and you build your muscle tone up, and that helps us carry through and carry on. But it does not make us any better than another survivor who may have committed suicide, who may not have made it all the way out, who may have suffered other mental health distresses that are debilitating, disabling. So it doesn't make us better. It makes our choice parameters different. I think that's pretty much all I'm going to say without having to go in on another topic. But I wanted to encourage people about specific socially acceptable management terminology. Like a lot of times these are kind of statements that are broadcast on the news, on the media. they'll, yeah, whatever, and that really is just a sign that you're not quite sure what to say to a violation survivor. You're not quite sure what the right words or the healthy words to communicate are. But understand that if it's healthy in your mind does not necessarily mean it conveys something healthy to the mind of a traumatic violation survivor. It's not fictional. It's reality. It's just a different reality than your own, right? And that happens with anyone. That happens with people who have other conditions, that blindness, deafness, hearing impaired people also have, I think they have a different term for it now. So I apologize if I'm not using clinical terms for these things, because I'm not a clinical learner. I am an empirical learner. I learn from life. So these are also different types of conditions which alter the reality or the perspective, or the real perspective of an individual who is experiencing life, who's filtering this life through them. You can only filter life through who you are and through what you are. I can't borrow yours. I can't see his or hers or theirs and be like, could I just borrow your filter right quick? Because my processor is not functioning the way I need it to right now. It can't work like that. I'm not going to swap heads with you and figure out how this thing goes. I can only do the maximum of my own personal ability in computation and in calculation of all this that is filtering through me. And what I have in there is a whole lot of other things used to filter, right? We'll talk about that in filtration when we talk about filtering the life that we live. So that'll be another post. Anyways, I think my time is up. I hope you find this useful. I will try to make little sound bites for people to share important notes that you might have picked up that you would like to share. Nobody visited me in my room today, but guess what? I'm going to talk till someone listens. So I'll be staying with you, and I'll be here to answer questions. Should anyone have questions, if I can answer them, I will. And if I can't, I will discover how to, and either forward you on to someone who can answer those, or I will give it my best shot and still forward you on. In any event, thank you so much for your time and your consideration of the things that I am sharing with you. I hope that they have the ability to shift some people in the direction of traumatic violation restoration. And that's a direction that needs to be shifted on all fronts. The traumatic violation survivor needs to make the shift, but so does the environment. So does the environment surrounding the traumatic violation survivor. The shift has to be moved together if it's going to maximize restoration, maximize the ability to get well. There isn't enough therapy in the world if the soil isn't ready to receive the seed. Okay, so with that, enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm probably going to do one more of these before the night is out if I don't make it, because these really do drain me. There's a lot of focus involved, especially for me with a mind like mine. I have to focus hard. And anyway, in any event, I will talk to you later, and all you do, be well. Take care.